Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and in this video we're breaking down the Conjuring. Based on the true story of the Perron family, The Conjuring follows them as they move into their dream home. However, they soon discover that the new house isn't all it's cracked up to be. Terrorized by the ghost of an evil witch named Bathsheba, she wants to take over the house and kill its new inhabitants. The story of this haunting then finds its way to paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. In the film, we watch them as they help the family fight the evil among them and cement themselves as the real Ghostbusters. Over the years though, we've had lots of things come out about the story. This includes one of the kids, Andrea, who published 3 volumes on the house. Known as House of Darkness, House of Light volumes 1 to 3, they add some extra context. In this video, we'll be going through it all, and make sure you stick around until the end where we discuss the real story behind everything.
What's an inhuman spirit?
It's something that's never walked the earth in human form. It's something demonic.
Now, The Conjuring brought new life to the paranormal horror genre. Now, at the time, this was going through a bit of a revival, and Paranormal Activity had pushed the genre back to the forefront. Insidious would then follow shortly after, and horror took another step forward. The Conjuring's pretty much become the MCU of horror, with sequels, spin-offs, and prequels that followed it. The Conjuring brought scary ghost stories back to the forefront of horror, and cemented the Warrens as the paranormal investigators.
Please, can you come and take a look? Of course we will.
Now, we start the film by being introduced to Ed and Lorraine Warren. These famous demonologists are investigating the case of a possessed doll named Annabelle, which, how could you not know it's haunted? I mean, look at that thing! Now, it is said to be haunted by a child.
We learned from her that a 7-year-old girl named Annabelle Higgins had died in this apartment.
However, the rules are that human souls can't possess objects. Thus, the Warrens know that it's a demon. As we learn later down the line, this is Malthus, and it appeared as a girl, so they invited it in. Imagine this was an actual toy though. Who would buy it? Psychopaths! Anyway, after hearing the accounts of Annabelle haunting some of the owners, the Warrens decided to bring it home. This then takes us to their demon museum, where they collect items that are possessed by evil spirits. Because why not? Everyone needs a hobby. We will get into the Warrens and the controversy surrounding their investigations later, but this was indeed a real case. That's also along with their demon museum in the basement of their home, which Annabelle has since become the centerpiece of. There's a lot about Annabelle that we could get into right off the bat, but she has her own film, so that's a breakdown for another day. Before moving on though, I do want to point out just how different the Annabelle doll from the movie is to real life. The one in the film may be one of the scariest toys since the Furby. Ugh! But the real life Annabelle's just a regular Raggedy Ann doll. Probably just put this into a fireplace if it ever comes after you. From what I can gather though, they had to create the creepy Annabelle doll because of the rights. Obviously, you know, if you're the Raggedy Ann company, then you probably don't want your toys associated with a killer demon doll. When watching the making of and documentaries on the movie, you might also notice that the doll's always blurred when she's shown in the real life museum. So yeah, I'd imagine it's down to that. I think James Wan just has an obsession with creepy dolls, and we of course saw this heavily in his Saw series. We also had Dead Silence as well, which is about ventriloquist dummies, and it has a great twist at the end. Either way, we then flash forward to 1971. This is where Roger and Caroline Perron, along with their 5 kids, have just arrived at their new home in Harrisville. Those kids are Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, and April. I do kind of feel like in this instance, you should maybe take some creative liberties and just cut down the amount of kids. But I suppose they're giving an accurate account based on a true story, to a point anyway. Now in reality, the family lived in the house for 10 years, rather than how rapidly it happens in the movie. The house, called the Arnold Estate at the time, was built in 1736 just outside of Rhode Island. While the film depicts the house as a Victorian-style mansion isolated in the woods, the real house is actually pretty normal and is only about an hour from Boston. But we need it to be creepier. Now as the family excitedly run about their new home, their dog Sadie says fuck that. This is the first sign that something's off, as Sadie refuses to step a paw in the house. Hey, and with how the house looks in the movie, I don't blame her. Pack your bags, we're off. Excellent acting by the dog though, and who knows what they would have had to do to get her to stay there shivering and shaking. But excellent acting. Now, many people, of course, believe that dogs and other animals can sense the presence of the paranormal, and this is a common trope in a lot of horror films, which the family have clearly never seen before because everything about this house looks haunted. As the family settle into their home though, we then get our first look at a tall, scary looking tree that sits in front of the house. This is clearly inspired by Poltergeist, which also used a tree to great effect. I do feel like one's been heavily influenced by that movie, and even the doll Annabelle looks like the clown doll from that. This tree is very important in the movie, and we later learn that it's where the witch hung herself from. In doing this, it cursed the house, and it makes the youngest April immediately gravitate towards it. This is sort of foreshadowing for the later events with the witch's goals of killing children, and I also love what they subtly do with the kids here. One of them goes out the house, stands on a chair, and then hangs up the wind chime, which is some really nice symbolism that sets up the reveal through innocent means. That might seem like a reach, but yeah, with how good that one is, I definitely feel like it's intentional. Later on, when Lorraine's hanging up the washing, this is one of the first things that we get our attention drawn to. For now though, everything's great. The kids play hide and clap and explore the house until they find a cellar that's been boarded up by the previous owners. Kinda dangerous to be playing a game with a blindfold in a new house full of boxes, and they're kinda lucky no one fell down the stairs. Sorry, that's the parent in me.
Guys, you don't know the house well enough, someone's gonna get hurt.
Exactly, so stop them then. Upon discovering the cellar though, Roger goes down to investigate. And of course, it's very, very creepy. There's really just a bunch of junk down there left by the previous owner, but the scene sets up a lot of scares for later in the film. In the center of the room, something covered by a sheet, which makes it look like someone standing underneath it. This foreshadows how they'll later wrap Caroline with the same sheet when she's possessed by the witch. As Roger leaves the basement, the camera also purposely shows him leaving a box of matches on the steps. This comes to pay off later on when Caroline gets trapped in the cellar. We then get a quick scene of Roger and Caroline talking about the new house. Caroline thanks him for making the move work and that she knows it was a lot to bite off. Now, while not explicitly said in the film, in real life, Caroline put a down payment on the house without consulting Roger after seeing an ad for it in the paper. This caused a lot of tension, and yeah, we'll talk about things at the end and what really happened in real life. Now, it's not long after the family settles in that they start to experience a ton of strange things. This includes the mum waking up to find bruises on her legs. It's always cold, and there's some bad smells as well. Oh, what was that? Now, these were all elements that were also said to be part of the Amityville haunting. The haunting we're seeing here, it kind of picked up coverage because it happened before that story gained prominence. That went down in 1977, whereas for this film it takes place in 1971. Because of that, people have said they couldn't have copied Amityville. However, it has to be said that a lot of the accounts here only came to light after that. People were saying stuff like, kept it secret until now because it's too dark to talk about. But yeah, at the time, this basically got a lot of prominence because it's like, how could they have copied Amityville when it happened before it? The Now Playing podcast though, they brought up how the Amityville horror, that basically created a guide on how a family could make money off saying their house was haunted. If you grew up in the 70s, 80s and 90s, then I'm sure you'll remember these kind of stories were constantly getting TV specials. The Exorcist was also massive as well, and basically those movies created a blueprint for possession stories. Now beyond that, all the clocks have stopped at 3:07. The film later explains that this is the time that Bathsheba took her own life and proclaimed her love for Satan.
Time of death was pronounced at 3:07 in the morning.
I have no idea though how they know when she died down to the exact minute, especially with it being in the 1800s. But on we go. 3 AM is also considered by many to be within the window of the witching hour. This is a time of night commonly associated with supernatural events. The real witching hour has varied throughout different versions of folklore and ghost stories, but is typically said to be directly after midnight or somewhere between 3 and 4. This is also something that we brought up in our weapons breakdown, and there they also use 2:17 a lot. Either way, the phrase the witching hour dates back to as early as 1762. There it was used in the book Miscellaneous Poems by Elizabeth Carolina Keene. Some psychologists suggest that the origin of this phenomenon comes from 3 AM being the peak time of melatonin being produced throughout the body. So this could cause a person to suddenly wake up and experience the feeling of a supernatural presence. 3 is also supposed to represent the Trinity, and thus having it happen at this time is seen as a direct opposition to that. It's also the reason why the knocks happen 3 times.
All night long, just like that.
Does it come in threes?
Yeah.
Stops at dawn?
This video is sponsored by Bombas. Bombas not only helps you put your best foot forward in life, but they're also a company with a soul. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, Bombas launched in 2013 after the founders learned that socks were the most requested clothing item at homeless shelters. From then on, they stepped forth with the mission to donate 1 pair of socks for every pair that's purchased. And the socks are incredible. As many of you know, because I tell everyone every chance I get, I'm running a half marathon, and I decided to get some of their performance running socks. These are extremely comfortable and help me feel like I'm running on air. The site's also got a wide range of different styles, whether you want to dress up or dress down. They cover hiking, biking, day and nighting, and give your feet that luxury feeling. Bombas focus on premium materials like merino wool and extra long staple cotton, which really makes a difference. So far, they've also donated over 150 million items of clothing to those in need, so you can feel good about yourself while feeling good about yourself. They also have a 100% happiness guarantee. If for whatever reason you want to send them back, they've got free returns, so it's definitely worth checking out, even if it's just to try them. Beyond that, you also get 20% off as a new customer by scanning my QR code or going to the link in the description. Click that and enter the code HEAVYSpoilers20 right now and you'll get that 20% off. Again, it all goes to a great cause that makes you feel great and makes your feet feel great as well, and there's absolutely no harm in trying them. Definitely try them. Do that by scanning the QR code or clicking the link in the description and use the code HEAVYSpoilers20 to get 20% off. Thank you again to Bombas for sponsoring the video. Now let's get into the rest of the breakdown. We then get a scene of Roger and Caroline in the cellar that is just them talking about how it's full of junk. However, it does include one small detail that sets up the ending of the film. While talking to Roger, Caroline throws a toy ball at him which he catches. This ball is later used by the ghost to scare Caroline when she gets trapped in the cellar during the game of hide and clap. Roger catching the ball could be a subtle detail showing how he'll be the one to break the witch's possession of Caroline, as he's the one who's able to catch her, just like how he catches the ball. This plays off how despite the witch's attempt to make her focus on fear, she has something that breaks it, which comes back again with the matches. Caroline then notices another clock stopped at 3:07 and the family discover that Sadie's dead. I would have gone John Wiccan on these fuckers. The dog didn't go into the house though, and this shows the supernatural powers aren't just limited to the home. They go beyond the entire property due to the witch dying at the tree. Now in real life, things happened a little differently. It was their previous house where their dog died at, and the Now Playing podcast brought up how it was a bad boy neighbor that broke in and basically ended up killing their pet. Andrea actually did go John Wick on him though, and apparently she jumped on him, screaming she was going to kill him. She was apparently fully committed to doing that until the family pulled her off. The podcast said this is actually the reason that they ended up moving in the first place, because yeah, you wouldn't want to live next to someone who killed your dog. But yeah, we're doing it in a horror movie, so just make it the witch lady. Now, just a bit away over in Monroe, Connecticut, we meet back up with the Warrens. Interviewed by a reporter, we see Ed showing off his demon room. When first entering, there's a painting of a house to the right of Ed's head, and it does look similar to the house the Perrons live in. It's shown in the sequels that Ed's sort of a psychic artist, and this could show they were already being drawn towards the house. Some of the more notable pieces in the room also include a suit of samurai armor and a little toy monkey. This is a poster you can find on the Conjuring wiki, which also looks creepy as hell. Even the description talks about how it has human eyes and is psychotic. And again, who's buying this stuff? Many of these items though are more heavily featured in Annabelle Comes Home, where they get awakened by the demon doll. I am planning on going more in depth on those Annabelle breakdowns, so make sure you subscribe if you want to see more of the Warrens' freaky shit. We then see the whole Warren family as Lorraine brushes their daughter's hair in the study. This is later called back when the witch comes after Judy and she brushes Annabelle's hair in the exact same rocking chair. Back at the Perron's house, the haunting then gets increasingly worse as the whole family start having experiences. Christine and Nancy have multiple encounters with the ghost in their bedroom, which include shaking their beds and ripping off the covers. Roger also starts to realize something isn't right in the house, and he begins to hear noises. This includes doors opening and closing, which is always gonna sound creepy. However, Andrea comes to tell him that Cindy's sleepwalking. Jesus, it's hard to keep track of these kids. In real life though, it has to be said, Roger didn't really have any experiences with the spirits, so all of this stuff, yeah, they're taking creative license. Roger then comes into the room to find Cindy repeatedly walking into the wardrobe. As Roger brings Cindy back to bed, butterflies in a collage of photos can be seen behind Andrea. Butterflies have many symbols associated with them, which include beauty and new life. However, moths are used to represent death, and you could definitely see that being the case here. Among the pictures is also probably the biggest hidden detail in the film. Here, they actually placed a picture of the nun with his ushering in things for the sequels. This was also hinted at in the museum, as we had a painting of a nicer looking one hanging up. If you've seen the nun, then yeah, you'll know the story with this, with that potentially being Irene Palmer. Irene's played by Vera Farmiga's sister Tasia, and both characters are descendants of Saint Lucy. The nun's probably the most recognizable demon in the Conjuring universe, next to Annabelle at least, so it's great seeing this here, and a really cool setup that pays off a lot of things in the future. The Perrons then continue to be tormented by the spirits. There's birds flying into the house like they live at Privet Drive, and the youngest daughter also becomes friends with one of the ghosts. That is Rory. Now this is one of the other few ghosts that haunt the property beside the witch. Rory and his mother lived in the house until he mysteriously disappeared in the woods. Rory was never found, and his mother took her own life due to being racked with grief. Later on, during one of Lorraine's visions, we see that they actually are victims of the witch as well. It turned out the mother killed Rory after becoming possessed, which is why they still haunt the house to this day. It of course explains what could happen with the family, and it immediately raises the stakes. It's also worth noting that April talks to Rory through a music box, which is legitimately the creepiest toy in a movie about creepy toys. I know kids having imaginary friends is normal, but if my kid was doing that with a toy like this, we would be moving house and moving away from the kid as well. The music box though is a source of many scares in the film, and it also serves as the trophy that the Warrens take to their demon museum. Just a little souvenir to remember the great time they had at Rhode Island. We then get another game of hide and clap, which of course sets things up in the cellar later. This game with April's probably how the ghost knew they could lure Caroline into the cellar using the same game that she's playing here. But it's still very dangerous, mate, like you nearly went over the stairs. Before moving on, another background detail I want to mention is the picture of a white cat that hangs up in the girls' room. This is where many of the girls experience things with the witch. While black cats are typically associated with bad luck and witchcraft, a white cat said to represent innocence, purity, and also spiritual guidance. Not only does the white cat represent the children themselves, but also how those who are innocent can be consumed in an environment of hate and darkness. This could also be taken in a religious manner. This could symbolize that despite the haunting, more positive spirits are still with them and watching over them. Getting a clap from the cupboard, Caroline then goes over to find nothing there. Things then begin to take a more violent turn when the witch once more comes for Nancy and Christine. This time, instead of pulling the covers, it decides to pull Christine herself. Christine then breaks the cardinal rule of monsters, which is don't look under the bed. Nothing there though, it's a bit of a fake out, and after this she sees the witch for the first time. It's apparently standing behind the door in the room, but I did boost the brightness to check and nothing's there. However, we of course get the reveal later on. Played by Joseph Bishara, he also played the lipstick Darth Maul demon in Insidious. Joseph's a longtime collaborator with Warren, and beyond playing several entities in the universe, he's also the series composer. After this, everyone rushes into the room, and Christine says the witch told her that she wants the family dead. Now I think the scene is a great example of what made the original Conjuring work so well. The scene relies heavily on tension rather than visual jump scares, and it makes you feel the fear more, as it seems more real and relatable, rather than just being like, loud noises! Also, I just realized Christine's played by Joey King. Meeting back up with the Warrens, we see them being called to another haunting by Father Gordon. This is something they quickly debunk as just being the result of everyday household issues like creaking floorboards and bad pipes. While the scene helps portray Ed and Lorraine as legitimate investigators who don't just immediately jump to demons, I do have to point out, I highly doubt this actually happened. We'll get more into it at the end, but the Warrens were known to crave the spotlight and embellish their experiences with the paranormal. But hey, they got a movie franchise out of it. There's also a line later in the scene where Lorraine tells Ed that God brought them together for a reason and it wasn't to write books.
You said that God brought us together for a reason, right? I'm pretty sure it's not to write a book.
I think this is funny because they wrote multiple books and Lorraine was a producer and consultant on the film. This ended up making $319 million as well, so maybe God really wanted the Warrens to get that bag. Ka-ching! Back at the parents' house, we get probably the best scene of the film when Caroline's lured into another deadly game of hide and clap. Following the sounds around the house, the pictures hanging over the staircase begin to crash to the ground and lead her into the cellar. Falling down the stairs, she looks around the creepy room and we get the bed sheet sitting up once again. While looking at the sheet and waiting for something to jump out, the ball that she threw at Roger earlier then flies across the room. Caroline then rushes up the stairs when the door slams in her face. She then finds the matches that Roger left there and uses them to try and see who or what's coming for her. After getting the match lit, we then get the best scare of the movie. That's Rory asking if she wants to play hide and clap, and his hands are what appear behind her and clap out the flame. If you're paying attention, you might notice these are the same hands that also appeared in the cupboard before. This scene is not only the most memorable from the film, but also one of the best horror jump scares in recent memory. Whereas a lot of these types of movies, heavily rely on visual jump scares around every single corner, which some of the Conjuring sequels even fall victim to, the original really took its time to set up the scares and put you in a constant state of unease. While Caroline plays hide and clap with Rory, Cindy begins sleepwalking again, trying to get into the wardrobe. As Andrea gets up to put her back to bed, she looks up to see the baddest witch in Rhode Island, Bathsheba. The witch attacks Andrea and Roger then comes home to find everyone freaking out. This was another excellent scare and one that brilliant builds off the back of the last one. And normally I find jump scares really cheap, but these two, especially back to back, are some of the best I've seen. Unable to deal with the haunting any longer, Caroline then seeks out the famous Warrens while giving a lecture at Massachusetts University. During the presentation, the Warrens show a video of one of their past cases and describe their system of determining demonic activity. This includes infestation, which centers around footsteps, bad feelings, and smells. There's also oppression, where a victim's targeted, and this ties into possession, where the victim's taken over by spirits. Beyond that, there's also a couple of things to point out here. The video they show is the first case in which the Warrens encountered the demon Valak, which we learn in The Conjuring 2 is what Lorraine saw in Ed's death. This is an event that's alluded to many times in this film whenever Lorraine uses her gifts. The character in the video is also known as Maurice.
Take Maurice here. He's a French-Canadian farmer, had nothing more than a third-grade education, yet after he was possessed, spoke some of the best Latin I'd ever heard.
This is paid off at the end of The Nun, as we learn that Frenchie is actually Maurice. They even reshoot the footage and basically do it beat for beat here and replace Christophe Belliot with Jonas Bloquet. We also get a cameo from the real Lorraine Warren herself, who's sitting in the front row of the lecture, which is a pretty cool detail. After the lecture, Caroline corners the Warrens in the parking lot and begs for their help. Despite Ed's hesitation, Lorraine agrees to check out the house after hearing Caroline's sob story. This is different to real life though, as the Warrens went to them rather than the other way around. Ed and Lorraine then arrive, and the family tells them all about the weird things that have been going on around the house. Lorraine touches the music box, and not only do we have a reference to the monkey from before, but we also get what looks like a silver dagger. In our breakdown of The Shining, we discussed how knives are sometimes placed around or above characters to highlight danger. It's in this that she sees Rory for the first time. Outside, Lorraine does her psychic stuff and sees Bathsheba, which allows her to learn the truth. She tells the family that they need an exorcism, and while there are a lot of spirits in the house, the witch is the most hateful. However, they first need to get permission from the church, so they launch a full-on investigation. Once back home and reviewing their evidence, they discover that Caroline's voice doesn't show up on the recordings. Lorraine then goes through her research on the property and also gets a locket from her daughter Judy. This isn't important now, but it will come into play later. Lorraine says,
I saw it first when I came through your door. It was latched to your back. And then I saw it again with the girls when we walked into the living room. And it doesn't matter where you go, this dark entity has latched itself to your family and it's feeding off you.
I love going back to those scenes earlier, and you can kind of see Lorraine's reaction as she enters the home. You never really pick up on it in the first watch, but she's clearly looking about like she's just spotted Ryan and Harry. Now they then leave. In real life though, I get the feeling the Warrens were ushered off the property and kicked out the house like the ending of a Cribs episode.
Get out, get out, get out of here.
The family apparently were getting a bit sick of them and asked them to leave them alone, but it wouldn't have made much of a movie. Back home, they then dig up more stuff. According to Lorraine, the house was built in 1863 and the family never met the previous owners because they bought it off the bank. due to the prior ones being dead. According to Andrea's version of events, there are a couple of things that raise questions about their experiences in the house. In real life, Caroline put a down payment on the house after seeing it in an ad, and the book also admits that she was sort of a relapsed Catholic. According to that, she felt presences and saw apparitions. I won't really go too much into the kids because, you know, kids make up weird shit all the time, and also, whether real or fake, I'm sure having demon hunters around and a mum claiming to be possessed is very, very traumatic. What I will say though is that by Andrea's own accounts, there was some disconnect amongst the family due to Roger travelling for work all the time and not really being at home. And it definitely feels like there was a lack of attention from both parents. Either way, the home was erected by Judson Sherman, who was married to a woman named Bathsheba. Accused of being a witch, they discovered she was related to Marytown Esty. This is a nod to Mary Easty, who was one of the victims of the Salem witch trials, which accused women of practicing the occult. Tried, convicted and hanged in 1692, her executions become one of the most famous in these brutal killings. Easty is said to have dealt with everything with eloquence and grace, and even asked for her fellow accused to be spared. 20 years after her death, the government acknowledged the injustice and gave her family £20. Which fucking £20? You're taking the piss. Look, I understand inflation, but accusing a woman of a witch, executing her because of it, and then being like, oh yeah, maybe witches don't exist. I'd want a bit more than 20 quid. She remains one of the most admired figures of the time though, but when she lived, it was thought witchcraft could be passed down through family lines. Now this is what happened with the fictional Bathsheba. She killed her baby when it was just 7 days old, and also hung herself from the tree after proclaiming her love to Satan. She also cursed anyone who tried to take her land, which yeah, it's a bit different from Easty, but I suppose this is The Conjuring. Lorraine then goes through a list of deaths associated with the property, including Rory and his mother. This is along with another boy who drowned in the pond and a maid who died in the house nearby. Now, I kind of want to talk about Bathsheba Sherman at this point, who is the witch who supposedly haunts the Arnold estate. She was a real life person, but her story along with the history of the property is very different to how the film portrays it. First of all, Bathsheba Sherman never even lived in the house the Perrons owned or at the Arnold estate at all. She lived at the Sherman farm, which was a couple of miles over. There's also no evidence of her killing anyone, let alone one of her children. While it's unclear how many children she had due to an incomplete census at the time, she did have one child. That was Herbert Sherman, who was very much alive and accounted for long after his mother's death in 1885. Yeah, I said in 1885 because the real Bathsheba died of the ripe old age of 73 from a stroke, just 4 years after her husband Judson. There's also no evidence of anyone accusing her or believing that she was a witch. There's actually more evidence that she wasn't than she was, as she was an active member of her local Baptist church, and her minister oversaw her funeral. I don't think many ministers would do that for a known witch accused of baby murder. The biggest break in the case, however, is that the town where the Arnold estate's located at had a list recording lots of unusual deaths. These ranged all the way from 1806, and it was basically called the Black Bud of Burnsville. Compiled by historians, it has to be said it has no record of anyone killing an infant in the 300-year history of the property. Now, the film says that the house has had numerous deaths happen there, but in real life, only one actually happened on the property. That was Jarvis Smith, who died in 1901, and it was simply from exposure. Based on Andrea's claims from her books, Caroline Perron researched the local history and found Bathsheba and the story of her being charged with child murder, and confirmed the claim with a local historian. Caroline then told Lorraine, who had a vision of Bathsheba's true identity as a demonic witch in love with Satan. So yeah, you can kind of see how the history might not match up with the stories that have been told. Also, the book names the historian who supposedly confirm this information as Mr. McChurchin, but there's no record of anyone working as a historian by that name in the area. So yeah, some of it might be made up, and all signs point to Bathsheba being just a totally normal 1800s housewife, which is really fucked up to think that they just completely smeared this poor lady's name a couple of hundred years later for absolutely no reason. But yeah, that's movies, that's Hollywood, baby! Fully convinced that the family's being haunted by a witch though, the Warrens return to the home alongside their trusty sidekick Drew. This is also with Harrisville police officer Brad Hamilton. The team then sets up numerous traps and cameras to catch all the ghosts while the Warrens bond with the parents. Ever since people ding me on the Alien Earth breakdown for saying Maginot instead of Maginot, I've been trying to make everything sound French, but moving on. Lorraine has a vision of the family's vacation on the beach while touching one of their pictures, and she sees how happy they once were. Later, Ed helps Roger fix his car, and this is supposed to be a bro-to-bro bonding session. However, Ed is completely uninterested in anything Roger has to say and never hits a thumbs up. I honestly think that Ed hates Roger because later when setting up the cameras, Roger asks if Ed really captures pictures of ghosts and he goes, "Well, yeah, that's the point." Like, okay, Ed, sorry, mate, I don't go demon hunting every day like you do. There's also a line where he says he doesn't believe in vampires, but he does it in a really condescending way when Roger asks about using the cross.
Like holding a cross to a vampire?
Yeah, exactly. Except I don't believe in vampires.
Which, mate, I don't think vampires are that much of a stretch when you've got a demon doll that's currently in your basement. After getting to know each other, things start popping off and they begin documenting the activity. This kind of plays into the fan footage nature, which was the fashion at the time, but nothing really besides a door slamming shut happens. Officer Brad also shits his pants. If you pause right there, you can see the moment where he shits his pants. However, the next morning, Lorraine sees Bathsheba. Firstly, this comes in the form of a sheet which foreshadows the one in the basement. This thing goes up and she spots her in the window, which is such a great moment. She then attacks Caroline while she's sleeping. Bathsheba then takes full control of her by throwing up in her mouth, which is really gross but a common trope in possession films. I've always kind of likened it to how rage is spread in the 28 Days series and how vomit there passes on the virus, which is kind of what a possession is, as it affects someone down to their soul. That night, the ghosts then go on the full attack. Officer Brad sees the ghost of the maid Lorraine, and Cindy also gets taken by Rory. After searching the house, they find her in a hidden crawl space behind the wardrobe, which explains why Rory was playing the clap game from there before. This explains why Cindy had been trying to get into there while sleepwalking, as Rory was trying to protect her.
There's someone else in there with her.
As they enter the room, you might also notice you can see their breaths, which kinda plays off The Exorcist. Lorraine then finds the noose that Bathsheba hanged herself with and falls down into the cellar. Here she also has a vision of Rory's mother killing him. Bathsheba then shows up hanging from the noose, and it's in this that she grabs the locket that Judy gave Lorraine earlier. This is also when Bathsheba learns how to get to the Warrens through their daughter, and this is how she's later able to attack them in their home. Things continue to only get worse and more violent until Nancy gets thrown into a window and dragged across the room in front of everyone. Luckily, Drew's got it caught in 4K, and they now have the evidence needed to send it to Father Gordon. Before leaving the house, Lorraine has another vision and sees her daughter's body floating in the lake. And it was at this moment Lorraine knew she fucked up. Ed and Lorraine then race home to discover everything's fine, actually. Meanwhile, the parents go to a motel where they await further instructions. Ed and Lorraine then meet with the infamous Father Gordon. He's appeared in pretty much all of the films and is one of the major returning characters in the universe. At this point, they show him the compelling footage. However, Gordon tells them that the church won't approve the exorcism because the family aren't members of it. The kids aren't even baptized. Ed did say before they should do this, but it ends up holding them back. Luckily for the family though, Father Gordon is willing to pull a few strings and personally push through their approval. Before getting back to the parents, Bathsheba takes revenge on the Warrens and goes after their daughter Judy. Releasing Annabelle from her prison, Judy finds Bathsheba brushing the doll's hair in the Warrens' study. Judy is then trapped in the room, but luckily Ed and Lorraine arrive just in time before their daughter's annihilated by a chair. Ed then gets a call from Roger that Caroline's taken two of the girls and has left the motel. Realizing that Caroline's fully possessed and is trying to kill the kids, the final showdown between the Warrens and Bathsheba begins. The whole section is just constant back and forth, insane demon shit in the basement, and then Drew aimlessly running around by himself. In the cellar though, they trap her under the sheet. Not able to bring her to Father Gordon for the exorcism, it's up to Ed to be the hero. He begins to try and free Caroline from Bathsheba's control, and this involves some puking. It is so that this is evil manifesting in the body, and the blood or poisonous bile that gets spit out is the spirit leaving you. Levitation is also involved as Caroline floats in the air. This of course builds off The Exorcist, and she crashes to the ground, which breaks the chair, and that builds off the destroyed one at the Warrens. But in doing this, it also frees Bathsheba. She then goes gun-ho and starts blasting.
I started blasting. Bang!
Luckily though, Ed's saved by Officer Brad. Drew finally finds April hiding beneath the floorboards, and Bathsheba uses the crawl space to go after her. We also see birds swarming the house, which feels like a nod to the Hitchcockian classic. Bathsheba then reaches April, but Ed's able to stop her from stabbing her by calling her name. With a window of opportunity, Ed tells Roger that he needs him to get her to fight from the inside, while Lorraine touches her head and uses her psychic powers. Showing her the vision of the family from the vacation at the beach earlier that had the Windows 95 background, Caroline's able to break free. She then throws up once more, signifying the witch has left her. And just like that, everything's cool. The whole family has a big group hug, and the Warrens look on proudly. Try to kill me, but I love you. The Warrens then return home after another job well done. However, it's just another day in the life of a demon hunter, and they get a call from Father Gordon. There's another case, and the movie ends with a music box starting to play and showing that the Warrens' work is never far from over. Now, while I think the ending is a little abrupt, and it doesn't really have a big scare, I don't know why we focus on the music box, because you focus on that and you get one final scare and you leave going, oh, it was a big scare, but we don't get that. But overall, the first Conjuring is great. It's easy to see why it spawned so many sequels, and upon rewatching it, you can really see the care the filmmakers took to set up their moments and make the scares feel earned with the subtle details sliced throughout. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, but turning on my brain now, I'm going to ruin it for everyone. Now that we've gone through the movie's events of the Warrens' defeat over the evil witch, let's take a look at some of the other details of the real story and basically speak about how it was a load of crap. Now, most of the people watching this, I'm guessing you've heard that the Warrens, their work has faced a lot of backlash to say the least. Known to be swindlers and always seeking the spotlight, many of their cases have been debunked, including the most famous one at Amityville. In 1997, the Warrens were investigated by the New England Skeptical Society, who concluded that, at best, they were tellers of meaningless ghost stories and, at worst, dangerous frauds. Using Lorraine's supposed psychic gifts as evidence of the supernatural, their stories and books are filled with embellishments and numerous lies that have since been proven fake. There is also a lot of other really bad stuff the Warrens have done that I don't know if I can get fully into on here, but just know Lorraine had it specifically put into the contract for the movie that Ed could not be depicted as having any kind of relationship with a minor, which is an oddly specific thing to have in a movie that's based on things that you've done. Now, though this movie was released in 2013, this was potentially explained in 2017. There, Judith Penny said that when she was 15, a 27-year-old Ed had had a relationship with her. According to Penny, she fell pregnant and Lorraine persuaded her to have an abortion. So yeah, I don't want to get into any legal trouble, but when you hear about that contract being unable to depict a relationship with minors and then hear that story, you can make your own mind up, but I'm not a lawyer and I'm not accusing anyone of anything, it's all alleged. Now, Roger Perron also didn't really go along with his family's ghost adventure and didn't claim to have experienced anything supernatural, let alone help his wife through an exorcism. Andrea even quotes him telling Caroline that the Warrens were playing her and that they were two-bit charlatans that would only use her for notoriety and their own purposes. It's also important to know that the parents remained in the home for 9 years after the Warrens left, and the following owners, Jerry and Norma Sutcliffe, have never reported anything strange on the property. A minister and his wife also owned the home before the Perrons, and they never experienced anything but were written off by Lorraine, who claimed a minister wouldn't want to reveal that kind of information. Sure, that's why makes sense. The Sutcliffes have actually been very vocal about their terrible experience as a result of the Conjuring movie, and have even debunked nearly all of the claims about the house, one by one, to prove that it's just not haunted, it's just old. After the film released, they actually had to sell the house and sue the studio for people constantly harassing them. This was during 2019, and for the property they got $439,000. Coincidentally though, as soon as they moved out, the couple who moved in experienced a lot of supernatural things. They were very vocal about it to the press, and they later sold the home in 2022 for $1.5 million. Which, yeah, get that bag, mate. I think my house is haunted now I mention it. The current owners have turned the house into a business with constant tours where people can stay overnight and experience the ghost for themselves. There's actually a lot of funny weird lore surrounding the current Conjuring house owners, and that could even be its own video. But just know that the owners recently fired someone because a ghost told them that the staff member was stealing money. No, I did not make that up. Also, one of the two main tour guides who channels the spirits to communicate with people is the daughter of Jason Hawes from Ghost Hunters, which, yeah, draw your own conclusions there, and like I said, it could be its own video itself. But was it all bullshit? Did Ed and Lorraine Warren take advantage of a vulnerable family and then make millions in the process by destroying the legacy of random people from the 1800s? I don't know, but it made for a pretty solid horror movie. There are obviously a lot of issue with the true aspects of this story and the Warrens' involvement, but if taken as just a horror movie, meant to scare you, then yeah, it's one of the most notable of the millennium. It was massive at the time and has of course created lots of different spin-offs and sequels. So yeah, overall, hope you've enjoyed me going through it, and let me know in the comments below what you think about the truth behind The Conjuring, and make sure you hit the thumbs up while you're there. Be sure you subscribe as well, as we'll be going back through all the entire series, and yeah, though it might take a couple of months, we will be visiting them all. If you want to follow us on Instagram and keep up to date with what we're doing as well, then make sure you check us out at Heavy Spoilers. Did you know as well that members of the channel also get early access to videos just like this? If you click the join button, you get at least one breakdown a week before anyone else, and it all goes towards helping videos like this get made. Now, if you want to watch our breakdown of weapons, then yeah, check that out on screen right now. Make sure you check out the merch store below the video as well, and hopefully you've enjoyed us going through it. With that out of the way, I've been your host Paul, you've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.